Hey guys, so made a video earlier this evening with Michael, just about the Liberal, our new Prime Minister, um, and I mentioned to him that I was going to make a case for civil media. Now, civil media isn't an idea right now. All it is just an idea. I don't even know. I haven't Googled it, but I'm sure things will come up. But it's just an idea that social media could be tweaked a bit to make it better. Um, But of course, this is all just a theory, and what'll come of it, who knows? Right, so I believe basically that there are two ways to collectivize. Right, top down, which you could call consensus building, or bottom up, which you could call gaining consent. And I'll talk about these a bit different, a bit later. But um, top down, say there's some seat of power, and they've gathered resources from the people, from all the people, and they then say to the people, what do you think about X? And in the general consensus, they then implement, right? So if your government is collecting tax and allows you to vote about anything, and they carry out what the vote is, then that's what I would call consensus. And a lot of people will probably think, well, isn't that how it always works everywhere, all the time? What's this bottom up stuff? Consent. I'll just show you consent in the US Declaration of Independence. Right, so I've got to change now. Here we go. Right, so I'll just read and scroll. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitled them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. So just pay attention to the laws of nature and nature's God. Right, our ideas can't change reality just because you like the ideas. Your ideas have to try to work with reality at best. And then you say, well, where does reality come from? We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. So liberals love this bit. That they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, or things should be inalienable. That among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Conservatives love all this here. Right. And unalienable rights, conservatives. Everybody, all men are created equal. Liberals. And they're not really taking it in context. Right, this is the bit that I like. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, to institute new government, laying its foundations on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their happiness and safety. And it goes on. But for me, this is a really important part of the US Declaration of Independence. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the government. The governed. Right. So what is this consent that they're talking about? And I'll just have a couple of... Well, let me just talk about the theory. I've probably mentioned this. Social media is a tool for consensus building, right? Because you can create content, you're a user, there are other users, and you create and consume content. There's various platforms, and you get YouTube, and it's different to Facebook, but I'd say all in all, people basically comment, like, dislike, comment, approvingly or disapprovingly, and it's all based around consensus, whether they agree or not on that item as a sort of absolute. So my theory is that civil media will be a tool for consent building. So it's trying to get the consent of people to act collectively in their name. Right, so I'm going to try show you consented work in most of our Western countries, America, Australia, the UK, Canada, and New Zealand, even surprisingly. Right. Civil society. Those acting together without being acted upon. Right, it's important that a bunch of people who have voluntarily cooperating are not stopped from doing so because the state doesn't like it or whatever. Now that's not to say, now I'm for voluntary cooperation. So I'm not saying civil society, because it can build a consensus, can then use force on individuals. So say a church becomes popular, it's, the majority of people go to church. I'm not saying the church should then be able to turn around and say, we have the majority, all of you come to church, you'll all be Christian or whatever. Right, I'm not saying that. That should be stopped. But I'm also saying the vice versa, which is that somebody outside of the church shouldn't be able to impose themselves on the church. Like one person shouldn't force a whole group of voluntarily cooperating people to stop cooperating. Right? So non-members should not use force upon civil societies and vice versa. Right, so now just think about this in like in a civil media mine's like, geez, I've been blanking today with words. They just disappear as I need them. Context. In a civil media context, right? It's easy to allow people to act together, right? Because you're a user, somebody else is a user, and if you want to act together, right, you sign up, you agree, boom. You're not going to be able to force people to do things. Right, so that's pretty good from that perspective. Federalism. Right, a couple of definitions. Federalism is ownership of the whole by the parts. Right, so the smaller the parts, the smallest parts own bigger parts, own the whole. It's principal and agent. So the parts are the principal and the whole is the agent. So the principal creates an agent to act on their behalf, but the principal decides what's going on for how long, and it's like asking somebody to be your lawyer. Like you're saying, defend me in this case or prosecute this case, but you are representing me, and at any time I can say you're fired, get the next bloke in or whatever. Right, so federal government is the agent of the states. And there's, like in America, there's bloody 50 plus states. In Aussie, there's 7. So, Jesus, I hope there's 7. Which in turn is the agent of their citizens. And within these states, you get local governments. In the states, you've got counties and so on. And citizens are the ultimate principles. Popular sovereignty. I know a lot of Christians, or certain types of Christians, are against popular sovereignty, and they want monarchy and these kind of things. I'm obviously fucking missing a great deal there, but I just get the sense that they think if you are pro popular sovereignty, that you're against God being the ultimate sovereign. But I won't go into it here. Maybe I'll probably do something with this popular sovereignty in that integration playlist, because probably talk too long on it. But if everybody is free to exercise their will so long as they're not obstructing other people from doing so, basic liberalism, then the truth, or the ability to understand a lot of nature, it's open, it's up for grabs. So you can get people with like 1 in 1,000 knowledge, doing things, manifesting things into reality. And you can get people who are 1 in a million knowledge or 1 in a billion knowledge, using that knowledge and benefiting themselves, but obviously benefiting other people, right? It's like people who go to work and they hate their jobs and they hate capitalism are still benefiting from it, and they can all the while understand capitalism properly, not just their misrepresentations, and they can get it straight, and then they can realize how lucky they are. And then your life changes if you do that, right? You don't go to work and you hate it. You actually get involved and you enjoy it. And so I reckon popular sovereignty, you have to have popular sovereignty in order for God to be the ultimate sovereign. And I'm using a very broad word for God here, so I know some Christians will be like, well, that's not God. But I'm using a broad, almost psychological term for it, and I know that's a crime to some people, but yeah. So he has like a little, what do you call it, illustration of this federalism. Lasting freedom, peace and prosperity come from adhering to the laws of nature. You got your laws of nature, we the people, popular sovereignty. You got your local government, so the people have to be liberal. They cannot bend the laws, they cannot even attempt to bend the laws of nature. And we know what happens in countries where they try bend the laws of nature. You get Zimbabwe, they don't have we the people. They just have shit all over the place. Right, so we the people, popular sovereignty. These sovereigns create their local governments, create their county governments. So they release some power to create local governments. These local governments release some power to create their counties. The counties release some power to the states, and the states relieve some power to the federal government. Right, so it's all coming from nature, slowly, gradually. Right, so this is bottom up. Top down would be all the power comes from the federal government, and they give some to the states to do a few things, and some to the county, some to the local government, and the people with bugger all. And it's very easy to just ignore the laws of nature because it's not grounded in anything. It's the abstract just coming down and then confronting nature head on, and you wind up with what people call a republic, but it's not. Democratic Republic of Congo. It's not a republic, chaps. So this is another way of illustrating it. So you got state powers, local government powers. You could have a fourth circle here and just say the people or individual, federal, and then you've got what you could say, these are like reserved powers, right? Reserved to local, reserved to the state, given to the federal government, and then these are like concurrent powers. They've got all this terminology. Right, so federalism's happening in our Western countries. Civil societies are well protected most of the time. Sometimes there are dodgy things that happen, but they normally get corrected. And representative government, representative bodies, because I'm trying to just put this into the civil media context, I'm trying to show you that it already exists and how a website could basically facilitate this sort of stuff and make it more widely available to everyday people. So James Madison and the Federalist number 14. So when the Americans first got their independence for 14 years or so, they used what they called the Articles of Confederation. to run the country. And then it sort of over that time it became agreed that they had limited the power of the central government too much, and it was too ineffective. So they had a big why am I always blanking? Convention, the Constitutional Convention. And they had campaigns, and so they were the Federalists who wanted to give the central government more power, and then there were the Anti-Federalists, and they were writing these things. So the Federalist Papers, I think there's 52, and written mostly, I think, by James Madison. One of them wrote most of them, and a few others contributed. And it was basically like here's our reasoning. And then they had this convention, and they ratified the Constitution of the United States of America. And it's the oldest constitution still used today. Right, so he's just talking about democracy or voting or consensus and consent in different terms though, but you can see the parallel. The lines they don't join. The era which limits Republican government to a narrow district has been unfolded and refuted in preceding papers. I remark here only that it seems to owe its rise and prevalence chiefly to the confounding of a republic with a democracy. Right? People do that to this today. Almost everybody just thinks the two are interchangeable. Republic, democracy, what's the difference? Applying to the former reasonings drawn from the nature of the latter. Right? People expect a republic to just run on consensus, and it doesn't. Representative government, representative bodies don't run. So like I would call Australia a republican form of government. A lot of people would say, oh, but it's under the Queen, and but I'm just saying, effectively, it's a republican form of government. And this Republican movement in Australia to get rid of the Queen as head of state, and that does bugger all to change how Republican it is. Doesn't make it more Republican, doesn't make it less. Right. The true distinction between these forms is also adverted to on a former occasion. It is that in a democracy the people meet and exercise the government in person. In a republic they assemble and administer it by their representatives and agents. Democracy consequently will be confined to a small spot. A republic may be extended over a large region. Right. So democracy happens at home, and then you send representatives to administer the government and other agents at a higher level. Right, that website, representative bodies could form easily, because not all representative bodies are going to be for the state or for political parties. You'll get smaller ones, like Australian rugby is in a dog show. You think maybe they could form a representative body, get rid of the Rugby Australia, or make it part of, give it some voice in this. It's just sometimes things get too commercial, and it's like, how did this happen? You gave up your rights. Right, the franchise, the right to vote, the right to elect a representative, i.e. that you're a true principal. So if you're a tax-paying citizen, you are sending resources and a representative to decide how those resources are collectively spent. If you're not a tax-paying citizen, you're not truly a principal. You're dividing a representative among you and the guy that's chipping in for your say, right? So in Rhodesia, there used to be a voting franchise, but it was called racist, and they got rid of it after independence. And a lot of people said this will be a shit show. just 20 years later, it became a shit show, and it's still a shit show. But hey, you can't be racist. Constitutional items, right? Constitutions generally you need a super majority or 2/3 to change. But you could have elections, timing of elections. There's a whole range of things that go into constitution, and you could put them into a website pretty easy. At this day, hold a vote for this. These are the positions. This is the executive. These are the members. Members can do this. It would obviously be limited to general, or maybe you make it so that people can basically program, I don't know, their own functions. I don't know. All I'm good for is criticizing stuff. I won't be able to build any of this. Rules of order, right? Also known as parliamentary procedure. It's how a bunch of people who get together on a voluntary basis, because even though they're together voluntarily, they don't get on 100%. So when you've got 100 disagreements, how do you get things done? And this is a big one. It's rules of order. You say, right, people can table a motion. If that motion is seconded, then it goes to a vote. After that, people can propose amendments, and if there's a vote and the vote is a majority, you get like simple majorities. You get all sorts of majorities, but if there's a majority, then the amendment is added on. So you can add on a whole bunch of amendments to the main motion. Then you have a vote on that motion, and if it passes, then it's adopted. Right, there's a whole lot more to parliamentary procedure, but you can see how you could log in, go to one of your groups or whatever it is, and you could table a motion, second somebody else. All these things could be done, and they could be done instead of happening at a meeting. It could be, this number of days goes to tabling motions. This is how long they get to be seconded, and maybe the most seconded, get priority, and then those motions. So, just in a sort of civil media context, that could be programmed into a website pretty easy. Like I talked about with the US Constitution, you could ratify things where you get everybody's agreement to form the foundational principles, and conventions are just like events, like where things are, people act collectively and get things done. So yeah, civil media, because you have a user, and they'd only joined voluntarily. Civil societies are formed. You've got federalism, representative bodies, constitutions, franchise, rules of order, ratification, conventions, and so on. So I'll give you an example of where this could apply. You're a user, you've got a profile, and you're part of many different things. But say one of the things you're part of is a club, a footy club or a cricket club or whatever. So then you get a bunch of clubs, and the members of the club pay their, what do they call, fees? I think they call them fees, yeah, in Aussie. That's your franchise, right? That's what earns you the right to have a say. So you pay your fees, you're a member of the club, and you have votes, and you select your agents or your representatives. And maybe you have an executive, so people who run the club and so on and so forth. But your representatives can then represent the club in an association where they decide where games are played, when, and how the ladder runs, and so on and so forth. And you could have even higher levels where, you know, you have maybe a state team is picked from the various associations within the state. So you have a competition where the best players from each association form a team and play each other, and then you get the state team. That could go higher, and you get your national side. So now you get these representative bodies where all the clubs are represented, and they decide on how to run things at the various levels, because you're going to have your clubs, and you're going to have your association, and then the state, and then constitutions. Well, what's the membership fee? That's in there. It can't be changed unless you get a big supermajority to change it. Rules of order. I mean, like, imagine in a political party, and you paid your membership fee, joined a political party, and then they ran like an online convention, because they got to figure out what their platform is. And so they give the members the ability to create motions, second motions, and over a period of time, bunch of activity, they work out what their members want from their government, and they engage with representatives and so on. Ratification could be done, conventions, so on. Like, it's pretty unlimited, but you'd have to have common things like you'd be a user, and then you've got your profile, and then you can become an agent, and then you get a second order agent, third order agent, but it could all be pretty much programmed, So instead of logging onto Facebook and you just post something that's just highly contentious and half the people like it and half the people don't like it, you would basically go into the relevant, think of it as like a group that you're a member of, and you post something, but instead of likes and shares and downvotes and blah 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 and thumbs down and so on, instead of it being like a consensus thing, it becomes a consent thing. So maybe you go, instead of posting some random post, you post a motion, and then it gets seconded a bunch of times, and you end up third on the list of motions to go through, and then your motion, then you can upload a video or documents or text or whatever that to support your motion. On your profile you could have like a blog, which maybe you just sort of outline what you're about and organize the content so that people can figure out, instead of like where blogs are just sort of, they come out and they're all in a role and there's no like content positioning. You could organize your content and then use that to support your motion, but you could upload a motion video explaining this is what it's about. People could upload amendment videos. I agree with this, but I'm worried about that. So if we add this amendment, I'm all good. But you don't do it all at once. You sort of, it's like, okay, your motion is live now. You've got 2 days to present your case, and then after that, everyone's got 2 days to send feedback or make amendments, whatever it is. And so at the end of the day, your motion passes or doesn't pass, and you get people say, well, these were the problems with it and so on. But the point is, it's not consensus. It's not trying to convince everyone. The world is full of too many people trying to persuade people. There's just always going to be infinitely more people with a different worldview to you. So I'm just thinking of this as a more active, engaging way of doing things. So I suppose what I'm going to do is I will send this. Well, Michael will probably watch this at some point, and I hope it's not getting too long now, because I do ramble like a motherfucker, and I'm rambling saying that. But I'll get feedback from Michael. Maybe we'll show it around, see what goes on. But it would be great to maybe find a group of people who would like to use it, find out the core features that they would use, and maybe build from there. So you maybe would have to find somebody who is developer, web developer or something, because I can do a bit of HTML, a bit of CSS, and nothing real strong. But yeah, I'm sure like a half decent web developer could stick together some basic starter piece, and we could test it on ourselves, and if we like it, take it to some other group where there's going to be different features demanded, and build those features in, and just try and map out all the features and try and make sure it's sort of intuitive, easy to understand. Yeah, so yeah, I'd like to hear some feedback. If anyone knows a web developer who's maybe interested, of course you could just take this idea and do it. Yeah, web developer feedback, maybe some groups who are interested in having a go. I don't know. We'll just see where this goes. But yeah, we're going to definitely need somebody to build it, because I'm not inclined to teach myself things that I just don't get around to. I either just learn things instinctively, or I just don't. I just have no time for it. And unfortunately, web development is one of those things. Really love to know how to make a website, but I just drift off. Righto, thanks guys. That's my case for civil media. Hope you enjoyed it. Send some feedback. Cheers, eh? Thanks for watching.